Yo, we're here. So welcome everyone to another deep dive. And this week I am fucking thrilled to have Tommy Goodkin from World NYC. Say hi, Tommy.
Hi. It's a pleasure to be on this right now.
Yeah, I've been looking to connect with somebody from your company for a long time, and really appreciate you responding and taking time out of your schedule. You guys are doing really exciting, innovative stuff that I think can help the industry. And so, yeah, let's get into it.
Awesome.
So talk a little bit about like, what's your role there? Let's start there. Give me a little bit about your background. Who are you and what do you do for VR World?
Yeah, so by title, I'm the head of content. Obviously, it's a startup, so we're all wearing a lot of hats. But that could mean a lot of things, obviously. So what it really comes down to is I'm curating content, generating licenses, actually working with all sorts of creative collaborators across all sorts of channels. So, if that's social media content, branding, advertisements, in addition to virtual reality content. Helping with the implementation of technology across the space, coming up with creative strategies to take us through to the next level. So yeah, I mean, it's been an absolute blast, and there's always an adventure every day.
Cool. So I went to. What's your background before VR World? Like, how'd you get into the space?
Yeah. I like to joke that my background is college, but in reality. I grew up with a lot of family in music festivals. So since I was 14, I was on the ground helping out with a lot of those. So in some capacity, location-based entertainment is totally in my DNA. But fast forward to NYU, I got really involved in the virtual reality programs there. And afterwards worked as an art director, doing everything from branding to web development to a little game design here and there. And it all brought me here.
Cool. Awesome. So, yeah, and my experience in college was like a year and a half partying in a fraternity. I was brother high DJ. That's about all I remember of college. So, a bit of a blur. So VR World New York, so I'd heard about you guys. I'd actually was doing some work for Zero Latency when I first heard about it. I kind of toured before you opened while it was under construction, which was probably before you joined, like the catacombs, looking at space and everything. And then you guys opened, and it's become a bit of a phenomenon. Like it was a really bold, especially at the time. How long have you guys been open?
It's about a year and a half and some change. So we're coming up on
like 2. It's been longer than that. Okay. Yeah. And it's a pretty bold move. It's big. So give us a little bit of, just kind of a little bit of an elevator pitch on the business. And then I'm going to show, you've got a trailer on YouTube that I'm going to share with everybody to give some visual backup to it. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So we opened about a year and a half ago, as I said, as more of a proof of concept. So just kind of testing the waters. We wanted to see what we could do with the least amount of initial investment and the quickest turnaround time. So I probably was here when you came initially, but lurking in the shadows somewhere. Fast forward to now, it's proven to be quite a success. We're tremendously happy with the results that we've seen. And as you said, it's bold. We're right next to the Empire State Building. So we're spanning 3 floors, about 12,000 square feet and 50 experiences. And being in one of the most densely populated thoroughfares in the world, perhaps, we get a lot of foot traffic. So there's anywhere from 10 to 40,000 people, 10 to 30,000 people walking past our space each day. Anything from tourists to people that work in the area to locals. And in large part, our business caters to them. But we also have a lot of people coming to us as a destination.
Yeah. So I'm gonna dig into that a little bit too, because one of the big questions that operators have is, location. How important is it really? And should I go for high traffic? Should I go for low rent? And I want your opinion and insights on that. But I'm gonna share this trailer with everybody, on what I call the trailer off the website, so you get a really good picture of the place. talk about that too.
Every time I leave his girl, he's the one that's needing the girl. He's the one that's needing the girl. Even as I look away, I can hear the words get said. I can hear the words get said. Yes, I know I need it. Yes, I know I need it. It doesn't mean I can't get over. It doesn't mean I can't get over. Love me tonight.
The Icarus, man, I fucking hate that thing. I've got some video. Actually, I didn't even think about it. I should have teed it up. I've got some videos falling out of that.
No comment.
I love it for like health and for like exercise and as a consumer.
That's 100% what it's for. Yeah.
And if Berkeley would get their shit together, bring their price down. But
It's expensive.
look at that mid-play between Berkeley and Icarus.
Yeah. Admittedly, I've never seen it.
Really, that's what's on it.
I suspect this was probably
Pretty early.
yeah.
What I like about it, it kind of set a mood, right, of the place. Like, it's very different than what most VR places are promoting, which is they're promoting the technology. And you guys are promoting a vibe or a feeling in a way that I think most places don't do, even though, you know, you named it VR World, which I want to ask about, but you know, but because it's a bit incongruous, what I think is the rest of the brand strategy. So let's just start there. Like, you know, talk about the vibe, talk about what you're creating there as far as the experience. What do you want your consumers to feel when they're there?
Yeah, absolutely. So we like to think of ourselves as more of an immersive experience center than a product experience center. So I think, you know, a lot of what's been going on in this industry so far is talking about the product experience. You know, what is the resolution of a headset? You know, how does it work? Where can it take you? What's next? You know, what is Oculus and HTC working on? But in reality, you know, our job is to provide immersive experiences for the guest. And the goal of VR World has always been to provide an immersive experience before anyone equips themselves with a headset. And to kind of, you know, touch on VR World as a name, you know, really we're an interactive digital media space. And that could mean augmented reality, it can mean virtual reality, it can mean cool interactive projection mapping. But you can't really call yourself interactive digital media world. It doesn't have as nice of a ring to it. And it's simple and big. It doesn't need explanation, and you know, people understand what it is right away. Now, looking forward to kind of the next phase of this business, we're working on a lot of really cool stuff, and using the name VR World as almost a tool. It's a little self-aware, a little tongue-in-cheek.
So how, like, you know, in that market in New York, you know, are you finding people coming in, because you talked about traffic and you're catering to kind of a lot of the local traffic that's walking by or that's in, you know, but you're also, you know, having a lot of locals. Are you finding the walk by traffic? Are they just coming in out of curiosity because they don't know VR? Like, what's happening to the awareness of VR, I guess, is my question, since you've been there?
Yeah. And we it's been interesting to watch the trajectory and how it relates to our space. You know, initially this space was definitely a place where you tried virtual reality for the first time. A lot of curious folks that may have been walking down the street, people that saw some digital advertising or print ads. And as we've progressed, you know, we've really had to kind of hone in on what's next. What, after people have tried virtual reality for the first time, what are they expecting? And after rigorous testing and really observing our audience, it became clear that people want to come here with friends. So increasing the amount of multiplayer experiences, making it a space for community, really kind of emphasizing the bar and the lounge environment, and ultimately everything about VR World is a experience that sets the stage for something that's rooted in bringing people together.
Yeah, now you guys were the first I saw that kind of went all in with a bar as part of the experience. And so how important has that been? What have you learned from it? Like, what are the insights you pull? And if you were talking to a VR arcade owner anywhere from, Des Moines, Iowa to Los Angeles, what would you advise them around like food and beer and wine and liquor as part of that experience?
I think first you kind of have to look at our location, being in a major downtown metropolis, as our proximity to some of the most important cultural destinations in the world definitely changes the script for us a little bit. But with that being said, a bar kind of creates this environment, where, yeah, I'll kind of liken it to a pool hall. If your friends invite you to go play pool, are you thinking about shooting billiards on a table? Are you thinking about standing around with your friends, having a beer, playing a little bit of pool, getting competitive? Really, what you're thinking about is the social gathering component of it.
Yeah,
And
so, so keep going. Sorry.
we think that that's really kind of the value of virtual reality right now, and even in consumer VR, it's really being promoted as a social tool.
Yeah.
But something about my perspective on it really tells me that there's nothing like being in the same room as someone, even if you're in a headset. The feeling of putting it on together and taking it off together is really exciting.
And so how has that shifted? Because you talked about now doing more multiplayer experiences. What did you learn about the single player experiences or even the 2-player experiences? And like, what's the size of the group that's coming in? And how are you programming differently now that you realize, are they coming in bigger groups than 2? Is it more date night stuff? And if they are bigger, how do you program for that?
People will very rarely come in alone. And most of the time people come in groups larger than 2. I'm not sure what the average number is of people that come. But yeah, it's that, and it's also being an event space. So, in the same way that we're very close to a lot of cultural destinations, we're very close to a lot of corporate headquarters, right next to the Empire State Building, which houses, everything from LinkedIn to Amazon offices. There's like a million WeWorks in like a 5-block radius of us. So every company has a large budget for team outings, and what better place to enjoy it than something that kind of promotes innovation, especially if you're a technology company.
And so all right, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about groups and events and the space. So one of the things you guys have gone with Oculus. So we'll move to, one of the benefits of Oculus is, despite the many well-documented problems with it as far as for arcades, is it kind of allows you to build this open space really easily, right? Where you don't have all the interference that a lot of arcade owners struggle with HTC and Lighthouse. So was that part of the decision process? Do you know, why did you choose Oculus over HTC? And how has that enabled, either intentionally or unintentionally, this open space that's now made you a great event location?
Yeah, well, we do have a lot of HTC Vives throughout the space as well, and some Windows mixed realities that we've been testing as well. But we're hardware agnostic. We don't feel like there's any particular piece of hardware right now that's been determined as the best thing. And obviously there's major occlusion issues with HTC Vive. But more than anything, I think this kind of like cubicle format of delineating VR experiences from one another doesn't really lend itself well to what I was talking about, an experience that starts before you even put on a headset. I think that immediately turns something into a product experience focused space when you are making the focus of the design around technology.
I think you can just drop the mic and we can just stop right now. And if everybody watching this that's in the VR arcade business just takes that lesson and applies it to their business, the industry will change and become more healthy and vibrant. And so what percentage of your business is group business?
I'm not sure of the exact percentage, but it's
Roughly.
you know, it's more than a quarter.
Okay.
Around there. Yeah, I think like we figured that out very quickly that you know, weekends are absolutely packed here. You can't see from one end to the other. It's like terrible if you have claustrophobia. But during the week, you know, everyone's working or in school. You know, how do we consistently bring people into the space? And you know, obviously during the week people have corporate events, so it made a lot of sense for us.
And how do you drive that business? Do you have a salesperson or a sales team that's focused on that? And is that their primary job? Do you have somebody? Because this is another question I get from people is like, how do I build a corporate business? And most people are like, yeah, you have to freaking hire somebody to do it.
Yeah, no, we do have dedicated staff working on that with a wide variety of backgrounds, mostly coming from either location-based entertainment or, you know, our head of sales right now, his background was working for Equinox Gyms. So she's definitely very finely tuned into the upscale kind of needs of clients in the area.
How big, can you say like roughly how big is your sales team? Because I think this is going to be a shock to some people, because you said team, right? And people, which means it's more than one person. Like how big is it?
Well, right now we have two. It's kind of fluctuated between 2 and 4, and we're looking for another if anyone knows anyone.
So if you're in New York and you know how to sell group VR experiences to companies or whatever, organizations, associations. Send Tom.
And we're not really even looking for someone with a VR expertise. In fact, I think it kind of benefits us if someone is coming from a more traditional background, because at its core, it's selling an event venue that has nested activities throughout it.
Yeah, and so there's a video here that I want to share again, which I love. I don't know if you've seen this one, or maybe you put this one up here, but I think it really kind of shows this open layout of the event. I want to ask about this one. Paris Hilton, you know,
go to a story
party. I just think just to show, and I want to know where people clean the balls, because you know that's a problem.
That's what my parents always said.
But you can see, like, feel the energy and how open it is, and this crazy party vibe. It's so awesome. So what was that like?
Yeah, so this was actually offsite. So this was at Tribeca Film Festival, celebrating a film that Paris Hilton had worked on with a few other notable celebrities or influencers, whatever you want to call them. Really kind of a funny story of like a mutual connection that knew she was really interested in VR. And let me tell you, like, Paris Hilton is a major VR evangelist, like one of the more passionate people I've ever spoken to. But they contacted us to do an activation around this event, since she's obviously super passionate about it. And we brought a few of our staff members and a VR setup, and offered them Tilt Brush and Google Earth, which we found to be very kind of almost passive, very exploratory artistic experiences, which are conducive to a room of drunk celebrities.
And so how often do you do that outreach, like taking events on the road? And is that a significant part of your business, revenue, marketing strategy? Like, how do you view those things? Or was this just a fucking crazy party you guys wanted to be involved in and you just decided to do it as an outlier?
A little bit of both. Offsite events have been a super core initiative for our sales team. With that being said, you know, New York is filled with a lot of events production companies that really specialize in bringing everything from like skee ball to, mirror rooms and photo booths to bar mitzvahs and weddings and the like. And they've already picked up on the VR thing, and they're purchasing simulators, they're purchasing headsets, and they're bringing them to events at very competitive pricing. However, what we do offer that they don't have is staff that's rigorously trained on how to operate virtual reality, how to make people feel safe in the virtual environment and the real world. And, they're all experts in the games that they represent. So for more of these kind of upscale clientele that really, look at customer service as an integral part of an event like this, they do see a lot of value in working with us. But anyone that's looking to save a little bit of money will probably go with those major big event companies.
Yeah, cool. Because there's a lot of people that are starting out in the event business and then looking to move into a permanent location, or in a permanent location saying, hey, should we do events to try to drive traffic? And in a place that maybe doesn't have as competitive an event supplier marketplace, that could be a good strategy for them. Yeah.
And I don't think you could find a more competitive event supplier marketplace than in New York.
City. Yeah, maybe Las Vegas, but
right. Good point.
And yet, Chris Crescatelli from VR Arcade in Vegas is doing a great job, and he does a shit ton of events and does really well. And so,
I think probably for similar reasons, customer service is everything.
Yep, absolutely. It's how do you, it's making them feel safe. It's a really good point. I think it's something that we don't think of enough in that first time user experience. And so, so I want to go back to the bar. And do you do food, or is it just bar?
It's just bar. We tested some snacks here and there. Wouldn't recommend.
Wouldn't recommend it. And is it liquor or is it beer and wine? I think when I was there, it was beer and wine. We
have a full liquor license.
Okay. All right, cool. Yeah. And so obviously for events, for corporate events, that's got to be almost a requirement. Do you find?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not just, no, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
Well, not just like setting up a satellite bar. A lot of corporate events really want the ability to send the patrons to the bar to order their own drinks. I think it gives them a sense of freedom.
Yeah. And then and do you run do you run the bar all the time for walk-in business, or is it just like at night? And how do you segment, your day parts for audience? Because I know I was there. I've been there a couple of times, but like once on a Sunday afternoon, it was just packed with families. And I was like the only weird, creepy, old single, guy by themselves sitting there drinking a beer, watching everybody. But like, how do you segment day part and audience, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah. Well, we are definitely geared more towards people in their 20s and 30s, just in the nature of the fact that we have a bar, that the experiences that we curate. But with that being said, we're very much inclusive to people of all walks of life from all ages. And we really want younger kids to feel like, oh, this isn't a place I should be in, oh, this is forbidden. It's so cool. We're playing around with different kind of techniques to delineate audiences. So, a concept that's been thrown around a lot recently is maybe after 6 p.m. it's 21 plus. Obviously, there's a lot of plus and minuses to that. Other issues that we try to solve are, do you let people into the bar without purchasing a ticket to VR World? When we have a very finite capacity that's easy to reach on the weekends, and we have these heads coming in that are only buying drinks that are taking up a lot of space, is that really getting us to our bottom line?
Yeah, interesting. So let's talk about the business model, the pricing model, the business model, because I'm a big fan of it. When I first saw it, I was like, wow, this is really freaking expensive. And it was run counter to way most VR arcades are run, which is on this per minute pricing model. And there's a lot of resistance and fear that I think drives on these, especially entrepreneurs that are in business for the first time. We're seeing a lot of, hobbyists that are passionate about VR, started VR arcades without a really good business knowledge experience base on how to do a lot of the shit that you have to do when you're running a small business. And one of them is pricing. And so explain your pricing model. How do you price the experiences? And then we'll get into the why of that and what your insights have been.
Yeah. So VR World is an admissions-based model. So guests pay one price for either a 2-hour pass or an all-day pass, and then they're able to do all the experiences that they want. There are a few add-ons that we always play around with, whether that's maybe like a cinema screening or a simulator, or like a mini free roam experience. But those are the exceptions. For the most part, if you pay $40, I think it's $44 now for a 2-hour pass, or 59, or I think we raised it to 62 for an all-day pass. Just incrementally.
Yeah.
You could do all the experiences. And from a personal level, if I go somewhere and I'm paying per experience, the entire experience, I'm thinking about how many minutes do I have left. I'm watching the clock count down. And that makes me anxious. I don't really feel like I have the ability to enjoy the experience when I'm thinking about the money that's being burned as I go through it.
Yeah.
I think part of us doing this is, out of necessity, just because the volume that we see in the space like this makes it a lot more possible to have this kind of model. But with that being said, we think it's a really competitive value. When you break down $40 over 2 hours and think about how many experiences you're doing, it's pretty cheap. And for most people, we want to make VR as accessible as possible. We want to democratize access to emerging technology.
And it's really interesting because really, if I break that down, you're charging $20 an hour, right, for a 2-hour experience. And I'd say that most arcades are seeing an hour as the upsell, like a half hour, and they're selling them up to an hour, and you're starting at 2 hours. And I think some of that has to do with the fact that the way you've laid out your system is you've got dedicated booths for dedicated games, and you have to move from game to game to game like an arcade would be, versus a LAN gaming center where you're sitting down and you're renting a computer, not playing experiences. And I think that that's a mindset thing that people just haven't, that a lot of operators don't understand, is the difference is like, they're really just renting equipment by the hour,
right,
where that whole access, and you have to move from space to space. So talk about like what led you to that decision, and what's the impact been on the consumer experience?
So we think that this is it's not a new way of thinking about it. This is a very tried and true system that you see in theme parks. In fact, in New York City, this is really competitive with movie theaters. If you're going to see a 3D movie for 2 people, you're going to spend around the same amount after you get popcorn and a drink. So it makes sense compared to other offerings in the city. But more than anything else, I think we really want people to experience the entire ecosystem of virtual reality, to be able to try experiences ranging from art to film to gaming, and not feel pressure like they have to complete a certain amount of things in a certain amount of time.
Yeah. And so the difference in pricing, so what's the 2-hour price again, and what's the all-day price, and how do you find the market segmenting between those two? Because it's a fairly insignificant upsell to the all-day price, and I'm sure that's very intentional. Talk about your strategy there and what you've learned from that.
So 39 and 59 were the prices before we raised them by a few dollars, and I'll have to double check exactly what it is now, but I think it's like 44, 62. Most people are purchasing 2-hour passes, surprisingly. I think, people kind of want to see if it's worth it before they go all day. But with that being said, all-day passes are a great value to a lot of customers that already know what they're getting themselves into and just want a place to hang,
Yeah. And so good question, Sean. And we'll talk about the platform that they use, because I haven't been there in about a year and it might've changed, but we'll talk a little bit about how that informs the consumer experience. But do you give them an ability, like when their 2 hours is up, can they buy up to the all day and stay? Or
oh yeah, absolutely.
They can. So they can go back to the counter, spend another $20 and extend their stay if they want to. Gotcha. So there's no reason not to do the 2-hour on your first trip.
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think,
do you find do you track like repeat visitors, and do they tend to go to the longer on their second or third visit, or do you?
Yeah. And I think maybe unsurprisingly, conversions from 2-hour to all day are as common as purchasing the all day ticket outright.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And what about sampling? So something that a lot of arcades are doing, because now you've set a really high price point for trying VR, and for somebody that hasn't done VR, spending $40 or $45 to try it, like, could be maybe not in New York, but it can feel like a big price point. And I can imagine some owners watching this and going, some guys are running 5-minute, like, free Richie's plank, for 5 minutes to try before you buy. And it's been really successful and a really high conversion strategy, especially in a place where you get a lot of traffic. Now, if you're at capacity, you probably don't have to do that, but have you experimented with it? And what's your thoughts on trialing as a means to get people in and convert?
We have not. And there's a few reasons for that. Partially, I think a lot of these demos are being done on Oculus Go's for reasons of, just convenience and setting it up outside your space. We don't really allow people through the gate if they haven't purchased a ticket, because, with so much size and so many heads in the space, it's really difficult to keep track of people. And I think we really want to provide the best experience possible. And if you're using a Go and probably a Quest in a few months' time, you're not really giving people that high fidelity experience that you're ultimately trying to sell them. Yeah. Now, if you are doing the really high end experience with an HTC Vive or Oculus Rift or whatever, I think it's a wonderful idea. It just necessarily doesn't work for us.
Doesn't work. And it's probably
not. And we make up for it in a lot of advertising that we think conveys what virtual reality is.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that. So let's talk about the system that you use. Now, you guys built your own kind of back-end client queuing system. How does it work, and what's that experience been like?
Yeah, so we're using an RFID system. So people will come to VR World, they'll purchase a pass. We give them a little wristband, and it has an RFID in it. And at each station, there's a kiosk, a small tablet with a reader on it, and guests will tap in their bracelet to each kiosk to queue for the line. It automatically adds them to the line, and then they get a text message when they're next up. So they're able to roam freely around the space and then go back to that bay. And then when their turn is up, then they just press play, the game starts, an attendant will put on a headset for them.
And so, and when I was there, I think the rule was you could only queue for one game at a time in the queuing system. Correct. But you could stand in line and wait for another one, right? So it's almost like a fast pass at Disney would be. Is that a fair?
Yeah, totally. And I mean, it's a lot of calculus to make it so people can queue into multiple stations. I've done the math a million times, and it's you really can't make it work. There's a lot of variables going on there.
Yeah. And so and now I will also say that when I was there, and it was a little early, it was probably early because it's been a while, like the system was busy, it was buggy as fuck, and your employees were really like frustrated with like people dropping out of the queue, and then you're in a queue for an hour and the queue's gone and people are arguing about where they were in the queue, and he's trying to manually recreate the queue. And this is one of the challenges of building your own technology stack. Like, how is that system, and what's it been like to build your own tech stack like this?
You're giving me flashbacks. We've come a long way since then, and there's a really exciting innovation happening on the horizon that I am very upset that I can't talk more about. But definitely stay tuned.
We love
probably the coming 2 months.
I love it. Give us a taste.
I can't, but we're developing a new system. Okay. Amongst a lot of other things. And this will improve a lot upon what exists right now. But with that being said, the system that we have after we've really ironed out those kinks is very useful. Customers understand it immediately. It takes very little explanation. And I think more than anything, it's giving us really useful analytics. Every time someone taps into that station, it's being recorded. And we're able to really gauge, what people are enjoying, how long they're doing it for, how many times the game's been queued, and even tie that back to the financial performance of it.
And so two questions there. One, first is, and this is a question from both, I think, Sean and Molly, is like, when their 2 hours is up, so they, I'm assuming they just can't check into another kiosk after 2 hours. It won't boot them out of a game, right? If they're in a game, they can play.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a little secret, but we actually really give them like 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah. So they have time to go
Just
get a
'cause,
beer.
yeah. But and additionally, all of our 360 content and narrative experiences, which lives on its own floor,
Yeah.
don't require queuing, which is another secret. Don't go spreading the word about all these things, but
Yeah.
people can stay in the space a little longer and try films out.
So you can go have a beer, watch a film afterwards, because that was one of the things that I was curious about. Is that like you're on a 2-minute, if you're on a 2-hour clock and you want to take a break, you don't want to take a break, and you're standing in line, and how does that all play out? And so you're giving people the ability to come and hang a little bit with less pressure. I think that's a beautiful customer experience.
And when you run out of time, you get a little message on the kiosk that says, "Oh, you run out of time."
Yeah, cool. And then how? So how do you use that information, or do you use that information to inform the programming of the content? So one of the questions is, if you have a popular game like Beat Saber, assuming that's popular in your location, like it is in most locations, and there's a long queue for it, do you then use that information to add it to more booths, to more spaces, and offer it in multiple locations? Or do you just say, fuck it, we want to go variety and we don't care what people want to play, and if you have to wait for 2 hours to play Beat Saber, then tough shit?
Yeah. And admittedly, as you've mentioned, the system does have its kinks, and this is part of what we're addressing with the new system, which will have a lot more robust analytics on it. But it's great for operational efficiency, not only understanding what's popular and if we need to increase it, but also positioning games around the space to improve customer flow and make sure that people aren't congregating into one corner, but that the popular games are kind of nested throughout. And taking into consideration some of the shortcomings of the system in its current state, we're also listening to a lot of anecdotal feedback from the staff members, who are some of the most educated people in virtual reality right now, just by the sheer fact that they've put thousands of people through the technology.
Yeah, I wonder how. That was funny because the other challenge I think that everybody has is all this shit's running on Steam, which is running on Windows, and I can't tell you, how many times they have to push Control-Alt-Delete to force stop Steam and restart it, and so from a labor standpoint, like you guys had when I was there, you had a lot of employees, and so like how do you manage that, and is it getting better, and like do you have a ratio of employees to customers that you can talk about, or employees to experiences, or like how does that work?
Our general manager is a retail veteran of many years, and has been in everything from department stores to hospitality, and she's really mastered the skill of anticipating how many customers we might have a certain day, and staffing in accordance with that. So there's some variability there, and it's not always correct, and sometimes people call out sick. But usually we know what the day is going to look like, and we make sure that there's an appropriate amount of staff members, usually one for every 2 bays on a busy day, or one for every 4 on a slow day. In addition to the attendants who are running the stations and really are brand ambassadors and customer service experts, we also have technical support. So a few guys every day that run around and usually restart Steam. That's most of them. But they're all total experts, and super commendable and all of that.
And I would say my experience at the customer service was really commendable. Like your people were super engaged and really friendly and helpful, and it's the number one thing that impacts consumer satisfaction and scores, net promoter scores in the VR world, is the connection with the employee. It's the most important thing. You guys have done a really good, a good job with that. So let's talk about content. Let's shift to content, since that's your title.
Awesome.
How do you, so you have 30 bays. We'll call them bays. I don't even like that word because they're not. You have 30. What do you call them?
It's we call them bays internally. On the customer facing level, they're referred to as stations, or just by the game that occupies them. Very, very rarely are they actually referred to as what they are. It's like go to Beat Saber, go to Tower Tag. We're really making sure that we're checking all the boxes for any type of customer that comes into the space. it's incredibly important based on the broadness of our demographics. People ranging from 7 to 70, really proudly split fairly evenly between male and female customers.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we're making sure that for every zombie game that we put in, for every shooter or racer, that there's also a more passive experience or something a little bit more exploratory and artistic.
And so how do you go about deciding what new stuff? And I'm gonna put up I saw you guys just recently posted this video. And by the way, I love this game. I'm a huge fan of this game, and I'd love to know how you're doing it. So for those of you that are not familiar with Electronauts from Survios, really, really interesting music game. I played it at GDC last year before it was released, and just fell in love with it.
Everybody get your hands up.
So it was, it's an amazing game that allows you to be a DJ without sucking. There's no chance you could suck, right? I mean, they've done an amazing job of allowing anybody to feel like they're being a DJ. How are you? So you're using it. How's it been received? What was your thought process in putting it out there, and how are you using it?
Electronauts in particular is definitely a game that has a fairly niche audience. But with that being said, I think it's really enjoyable for everybody, so they can feel like a rock star. Failure isn't really an option in that experience. Everything you do is quantized, and it anticipates what you're gonna do next and makes it work somehow.
Yeah.
I think it might not be as popular as Beat Saber or Arizona Sunshine. But with that being said, the people that enjoy it really do love it, and will come back and show their friends.
By the way, I think doing that as a mixed reality experience and tying the audio in to your sound system, I think you could charge a massive premium upsell for that, because there's a segment of the audience that wants to be a DJ for a crowd and would probably pay a ridiculous amount of money for that.
So. Oh, 100%. Yeah. And the Survios team has actually floated that idea past us before.
I'd love to see, I don't know who else to do it. I'd love to see you guys do it. And
awesome
I'd pay. You'd have to kick me out.
I would like to see that. I remember they suggested that we should also have a microphone run through some guitar pedals so people can kind of mess around with it and have like freestylers going on top of different beats that people are creating. So making a really kind of collaborative effort, mixing analog and electronic.
So amazing.
Really, really cool. Yeah.
That would be so amazing. So why did you decide to add that? Because that's not a title that's showing up in a lot of arcades. What was your thought process?
It really contributes to our mission of showcasing the entire ecosystem of virtual reality content. I think music is a really great way of communicating immersive experiences because it's very visceral by nature. And I've heard several people refer to it as almost like the gateway drug to virtual reality because it is represented super abstractly. So putting it in a game, there's no like a suspension of disbelief. You get it right away. Second off, we love the Survios guys. They're some of our favorite people to work with. So everything that they make has been, consistently good. And, I can go as far as saying like when they pitch us something new that it's probably going to be good.
I was just at their headquarters a couple of weeks ago and got to try some new stuff that they've got in the pipeline that I'm not allowed to talk about, unfortunately, because they made me sign a ridiculous NDA. And even after that, they were nervous. But yeah, they're doing some great work, and some of the new shit is amazing. So
they're always cooking something up.
Yeah, they're always cooking something up. So what's your criteria? Like when you look at what's coming out, is there stuff on the horizon that you can talk about that you're definitely going to add, or stuff that you've seen that you've just been like, this doesn't fit, to try to give us an idea of what your selection criteria looks like?
Yeah, I mean, frankly, we're constantly experimenting. you know, we know enough to know that we don't know everything. We can't anticipate what customers like. And I think, you know, part of being a company that caters to, you know, millennials or Gen Z or just people that share the 21st century mindset, who enjoy kind of the liminal spaces between, you know, subcultures and forms of entertainment, is that people have a high tolerance for things that are different or weird, and you can never be too sure what they're going to gravitate towards. With that being said, you know, we definitely gear towards experiences that are of AAA quality. You know, that doesn't necessarily mean super expensive, you know, high fidelity graphics, but it could mean something with a sense of style that was
Like
made
Super
by
Hot, for example,
one
right?
person. Yeah. You know, Where Thoughts Go, made by Lucas Risotto, incredible narrative experience. We're really proud to share it with guests, but it's like a interactive social network where you're sharing your secrets with others. It asks you a series of questions that are deeply personal, and you record them anonymously, and then you can hear what other people have shared. You know, and some really kind of touching experiences from guests going through that and having revelations, or you know, ending up in tears. You know, and then on the other end, you know, we're playing around with a lot of games. You know, Arizona Sunshine, Free Roam is definitely on the horizon. Tower Tag will soon see some physical installations built around it,
Awesome.
and increasing some of the haptic elements of that experience. You know, perhaps most weirdly, we are launching an experience called Ayahuasca next week, which just premiered at Tribeca Film Festival, made by an incredible studio, Atlas 5, amongst some other awesome collaborators like Avon, and Diversion Cinema is distributing it. But that's an experience about a ceremony with shamans in the Peruvian jungle around a psychedelic drug. So, you know, definitely off the beaten path for most location-based entertainment.
I love
But
it.
we find that a lot of our audiences are definitely looking out for something weird. You know, we cater to a lot of guests that are reading publications like Vice. So we figured, you know, why not try something a little groundbreaking, a little provocative?
Yeah.
You know, it would be one thing if we were building an entire venue around it, but just having it as one experience is definitely a risk worth taking on
And
our
how,
end.
and is that a 360 video experience? Is it an interactive experience? What's it?
It's sixed off narrative experience.
Okay.
So it's actually really interesting. It picks up on your body language and gives you either a positive or negative experience based on you know, how you're receiving the experience. And you know, Atlas 5 has a really great reputation for making things that are major award winners. You know, Gloomy Eyes, Spheres, Battle Scars, everything they touch kind of turns to gold. And you know, when I saw this experience for the first time, it wasn't just about the clickbait element of it, you know, like, you
Yeah.
know, try ayahuasca at VR World, which is a very compelling headline, I have to admit. But
Especially if
it's
you can
really
do digital advertising tied to people who follow Vice, right? Yeah, like I can
yeah,
see the marketing
yeah.
strategy already.
Yeah, I'm expecting some people to come in and being like, where's the where's the ceremony? But it's really a beautiful experience, and the visuals are gorgeous. You know,
Wow.
painstakingly hand animated. So
Yeah.
I think any connoisseur of art will enjoy it.
So when you look at you've got 50 experiences. When you look at the portfolio of experiences, like what percentage of them need to be mainstream, and which percentage of them do you allow yourself a little bit of indulgency around saying, oh, this is fucking amazing and it needs to be in the world and I'm going to try to help make that happen? How do you manage that portfolio?
Honestly, you know, I think probably 70% of the experiences have mass appeal, are really easy to understand. You know, it's what we know people come for. They want to do the racers and the shooters and the zombie games, which I frankly love. You know, I don't think every virtual reality experience has to be super meaningful.
Right.
Fun is fun.
Yeah.
But you know, we're always kind of trying to Trojan horse, so to speak, some, you know, more interesting experiences. And film is something that we're all really passionate about here.
So let's talk about the mezzanine, which is where you have these 360 video experiences, and And I think at the time I was there, you were using Galaxy Gear VR or Gear
Yeah,
VR.
no,
Are you,
not any longer.
yeah, what are you using now for those, and how much traction is it getting, and how do people use it? Because it's something that we're not seeing a lot of, I think, in most locations. What's your experience been with video?
We're playing around with all the standalone headsets, and that is a race that doesn't have a clear front runner yet. We'll see in the coming months who comes out on top, but you know, it's not as cut and dry, I think, as high end VR headsets. Although the Valve Index is kind of shaking up the mix a little bit. Anyways, it's been kind of a really interesting thing for us. I think you know, like I said, most people are coming for gaming, but a lot of people are staying for the cinematic content. And you know, whereas a typical space, I think, would see these as two different types of customers, you know, which they may be. There's definitely a lot of overlap, especially in New York. And I think people are not necessarily just excited about gaming; they're excited about a new form of storytelling, a new medium for entertainment. And I think it's doing kind of a disservice to them if you're not showing them everything that's possible with it.
Yeah, and what about the idea that this stuff, like that stuff's really easy to do at home, and you know, and you know, encouraging people to just go buy their own headset, especially look, if Quest hits the numbers that even close to the numbers that everybody's projecting for it, you know, we might finally see some traction on the consumer market with this stuff. And you know, how do you feel about the competition of the consumer market for some of that, you know, stuff that you could do at home?
Well, look, like, you know, I think a lot of it comes down to curation. There's a lot of narrative experiences out there. There's a lot of 360 experiences out there, you know, thousands on YouTube alone. So, you know, providing a selection of experiences that are celebrated or awarded, I think is a really useful tool for introducing people to the medium. You know, I also think increasingly we're moving more towards building installations around experiences. So giving context as to why the headset exists in the space. You know, for ayahuasca, for example, we're building kind of a ceremonial shrine. For Where Thoughts Go, we built a blanket fort, which is supposed to remind you of childhood.
Awesome.
And, you know, evoke some sort of vulnerability from people. And additionally, we're starting to experiment with kind of cinematic showings of VR. So social experiences, basically, where you all go into the headset together, you watch a film at the same time. And, you know, that moment when you all take off the headset and look at each other and say, wow, that was crazy.
And then have a conversation.
You know,
and then do you facilitate a conversation around it also, or?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think increasingly we're going to try to do more of that, invite creators into the space, you know, and it's the same as cinema versus Netflix, you know, obviously cinema is not performing as well as it's always had, but there's still going to be film buffs that like seeing, you know, films in a social setting, that like, you know, seeing it on the big screen, you know, which I think the parallel here is
But what cinema's missing is that social experience. I know you go together, but then you sit there quietly and then you leave and you go to the bathroom and you're in your car. And so, you know, or maybe you go out for a drink or whatever, but there are very few movies that inspire that, and there's no facilitation of the conversation in the post-movie experience. And that's where VR, I think, can change the game, because the experiences are shorter. And so there needs to be a longer experience. And so curating that, it's the book club model, right? Like you've just had a shared experience, fucking talk about it. What did it mean to you? How did it move you? Like, that's where the power of these experiences are going to be. And I love seeing stuff like that happen. And now that's powerful.
Yeah. There's these guys that just showed at Tribeca called Parallax, which is an amazing team. I really like them a lot. But they're working on something where you can actually watch a film as a group, and, you know, look to your left and right and see the other people watching the film, and everyone there has a different perspective, the same way that it would be in a movie theater or campfire or any sort of like congregational storytelling format. You know, obviously it's a platform and they've developed the first experience. You know, developers will need to introduce that into their experiences going forward, but I think it's a really convincing kind of method for showing film and making it social.
And is that experience, you said it's Parallax, like LUX?
Yeah. Yeah.
And is that,
12.
is that ultimately a consumer platform, or is it designed more for out of home?
It's designed for location based.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to check that
Yeah.
out.
Totally should.
And so there's a couple of questions I do want to hit. One of them is around overhead in New York City. And so, like, are you guys profitable? Can you make money in a major metropolitan area? And if so, what do you think are the keys to that?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. That's all I'll say, and it's been going very well for us. And I think it's kind of getting down to those magic numbers and doing a lot of math and understanding what volume you have to hit to reach this amount, and doing a lot of corporate events, because there's 100 venues or more in the city that are just event spaces, that just have bar mitzvahs and weddings. And being able to have kind of a consumer facing venue and also offer that to people is really kind of convincing package. And we've been able to overcome all odds and naysayers.
So how and I'll admit I was one of them when I first went through it. I was like, wow, this is amazing. It's crazy. And so I was totally I'll admit that. And so how important is the scale of what you built, 12,000 square feet, to that business? Like, and what do you think the smallest size somebody feasibly could do and still be a viable event space?
Yeah. I think a lot of these questions, Leo, our chairman, CEO, is probably the best person to answer.
I couldn't get him
honestly.
I did have a great conversation with him. I love him. He's a fucking character and a half.
Yeah, Leo's a great dude.
We'd have to have a 3-hour webinar though if I put him on.
Yeah, and honestly, everything he likes to talk, but everything he says, is always something I think about for a long time. Yeah. Sorry, I totally lost track of.
So just the space, like how big, how small, like the space. I think.
Oh yeah.
Square feet. It's a big freaking space. You've got 50 experiences and 30 bays, and so you can do these events. Like a lot of these places are small. They're 6 bays, 10 bays, 2,000, 3,000 square feet. When people ask me what to do, I say find a bigger space, and if you have to pay less rent, pay less rent. But how do you see those levers pushing and pulling them, and what advice would you give people around size of the business?
I think the smaller the space, the less viable the admissions model is, frankly. I think in order to do the kind of volume you need to survive on an admissions-based model, you need to accommodate a large amount of people.
Yeah.
And the same goes for large corporate events that are hosting 200 to 400 people, which can be a major revenue driver for us.
Yeah. And what size events is that the 200 to 400? You've done events that big? What's the cap?
Oh yeah, that would be a full buyout. Yeah. So
yeah. Wow.
The cap is probably 450.
Yeah. All right. That's
across 3 floors.
And I will say the funnel gets really big. Like the bigger your event space, the more targets there are for events. I know I've talked to operators who they can only do 20. And I'm like, the pie for people doing events for 20, it's like a sales team or an executive team. That's all you're going to get. You're
going to get team builders. Yeah. You're not going to get your holiday party for, major accounting firm. And, to add to that, we have a lot of technology in the space. The space is really modifiable. So, when an event comes in and they want to put their branding assets throughout the space or do anything, we can change the lighting schemes. We can, we have 30 TVs we can leverage for any type of content that they want. So
one of the things I saw is you have this, you have a video on your Facebook page, on your YouTube channel about virtual World New York City media and promoting advertising. And so have you been able, I know the advertising business is hard. Have you been able to unlock that? What insights have you learned about selling sponsorships and ads within your venue? Have you been able to do that yet? Or is that on a
It's a really interesting question, because sponsorships are very much welcome here, for anyone out there listening. But the reality is, for a space of our size, for the kind of budget that we need to do large scale activations, a lot of major corporations might find that money better suited for a music festival that does 100,000 people in a weekend.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I think it's the value of our customer, a paying customer that's coming to do a dedicated activity. For certain brands, that's going to be really attractive. And, I think in the coming months, as some of the news comes out about the stuff that we're working on, I think it's going to be a lot more interesting to corporate partners.
Yeah.
On the side of advertising in the space, that's a really tricky question, and I think it's hard to do it ethically. I think if it contributes to the overall message of what we're trying to convey to customers, I think it would be great. A Hennessy VR experience, a weird example, but that is about how great Hennessy is not really as cool to us as a Hennessy experience that talks about the process of making cognac in a tour through the village in France where it's all made. If they really leverage storytelling or have a very intrinsic message, then I think it's always something we'll consider.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people or some people get into business thinking they're going to be able to sell advertising in VR in some way. And I think if anybody's going to be able to do it, you have the scale to do it within a location. And the fact that it's even challenging for you guys, I think, is just a message that don't build your business plan based on advertising.
And frankly, it probably would work better in a mall environment.
Yeah.
Where you have a lot of bystanders and it's kind of like a kiosk in the center of the space, because that's what a mall is anyways. It's like
and that's what Periscope is doing. Like they've got a media platform and it's really a digital signage play.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because everyone is very used to seeing ads in those types of environment.
So So I have to say hi to my mom. She just dialed in. Hi, Mom. That's Sandra. You can say hi to her. She tunes in every once in a while to say hi. So so cool. Look, dude, and I think the last question Molly's asking about hygiene. It's an operational thing. We talk about it a lot. How do you guys deal with it?
We have methods in place. We're using disposable face masks as the first step. We're using vinyl VR covers as the second step. We have very carefully selected disinfectant wipes that neither damage the lenses nor prevent the spread of bacteria. And looking forward, we're playing around with some of the UV stuff. The jury's still out on that one. But I think it's very interesting, especially in a city like New York. Touching a subway pole and eating a burger is probably way worse for your health than wearing a headset. But we still try to go above and beyond and make sure people feel comfortable.
Yeah, I know. You just don't want to think about it, to be honest with you.
Right.
So, yeah, cool, dude. So, you guys are moving to a new space. I know you can't say much about it, but what can you talk about? The fact that you're moving down the block or something, right?
Yeah. I didn't say that much, but I guess it's
oh, sorry. That was something that your boss told me, and he didn't say anything about it.
No, it's all good, and I think it's about time we start addressing it. But I think we're taking everything that I talked about in this conversation and really taking it to the next level. These concepts of being a immersive experience space versus a product experience space will really be clearly evident in the new venue. And whereas this current one was maybe a little shabby chic, we were repurposing a space that already existed and was a department store for like 1 million years. This new space we're building entirely around our core mission. And we're just so excited to show.
Really excited, and I'm going to try like hell to be there when you guys open. And so,
you got it, Bob. You're on the guest list. I'm making
as soon as you have a date, let me know.
Opening party.
I'll be coming. I would love. I would love to be there.
It might not be as cool as the Paris Hilton party, but we're gonna try and hopefully make it cooler.
Yeah, awesome. So cool. Well, Tommy, thank you so much for joining and for like really answering all the questions and going really deep. I really appreciate that.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, and I hope this was this is useful to people and so thanks for joining, everybody. We'll see you. Sorry about the time shift, by the way. Tommy had a staff meeting and I'm in Australia and we're always trying to connect times. So,
Lucky you.
Hey,
Hey, you got to do the Wizards Unite, the Harry Potter AR. It has an open beta only in Australia.
Oh, really?
So get on that.
That's
Bob,
the new that's
yeah.
Samantha. Who is it? Yeah.
I was like, who do I know in Australia that can do it? And,
all right, I'm on it. I'll do it today.
Yeah.
Niantic, yeah, thanks for the tip.
Yeah.
All right,
Anyways,
well, I'll see you in New York at the grand opening, and make sure you let people know when it's going to happen. And I will see all of you guys next week. I'll be back in the States. So we'll be back on regular time, whatever that is. I think it's back to 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Central. So have an awesome week, Tommy. Love you. Love what you guys are doing, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks so much, Bob.
All right,
Thanks,
care.
everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.